So now we are going to the last part to finish. That is the exhibition, protecting our objects on exhibition. So we know that large objects will be stay outside a showcase usually, but they should have a physical barrier or a large base platform in order to avoid people to feel that they can touch these objects. Um, Open display is often used for paintings and large objects such as furniture and sculpture. Um, if we want, if you have display cases, these ones protect from touching, dust to enter, but we have to allow the air to circulate. Otherwise, it will create a microclimate that we don't want to. Anyway, for some objects, we can have very specific environmental conditions inside a display case. If this is the case, as my colleague Inês was telling you about, the metals. Metals need almost zero relative humidity, and you can do that if you have a good display case. Humidity and the temperature, nevertheless, has to be monitored and keep stable inside the display case and also outside. Okay, security is very important when you have expensive objects or very important objects. In this case, they should belong inside the showcase, and you should use security guards, surveillance cameras, and detectors installed near the objects. Never forget to increase security for very valuable objects. Also, avoid placing smaller items within arm's reach or near the exit. You know, the smaller items go to the pocket. Display case prevents handling by the public and discourages thieves and vandals. Large objects can be placed in a visible yet inaccessible location, as you can see in the picture on the left. Security cords and market paths limit public access, but still allow the enjoyment of the exhibit. This marking of the space is nothing but a psychological barrier, but it usually functions very well. Display mounts. So, general guides. What I wanted to tell you is that it's a good display mount if it prevents abrasion, deformations, and breakage. A mount can also act as a display tool to raise the object in the case and show it in a different angle. However, its primary function is always to support the entire height of the object without causing any new stress. Regarding dust and pollutants, if the museum has ventilation system, ensure that dust are changed regularly. So the dust system, the filters, a well-sealed display case keep out a great deal of dust, moisture, and pollutants. We can also use activate charcoal inside the display case to absorb pollutants such as sulfur compounds that can cause tarnishing to silver. You can see on your left a display case that has a draw on the back side. The room temperature and the relative humidity can be kept more or less stable using heating, ventilation, and air conditioning system. Another way to keep temperature and relative humidity more or less stable is using several different units of air conditioning, humidifiers, and dehumidifiers. Tightly sealed display cases can be used to create a microclimate for sensible objects. This microclimate is favorable and is distinct from the room's average climate. Regarding light, always avoid natural light. You also already know that UV filters are to be used whenever it's possible, and you should not exceed the 75 microwatts per lumen of UV radiation. The intensity of the light can be reduced by changing the angle of the light or by increasing the distance between the light and the work of art. Or you can have a switcher to turn in and on the light. There are several measures that can be used to decrease the light during exhibition. So nowadays we have the LED public light, optic light systems, and they are low cost, and they offer brightless light, cold temperatures with very long life. So, and they can be used inside the display case without infrared radiation, and be careful to monitor the UV of these lights if they are very close to the objects. Now, regarding to paintings on exhibition, you have to be sure that the paintings are very secure in their frames and on the wall. Choose hanging hardware that is appropriate to the type of wall, and this is normal, regular checking. Regarding the light, you can use more than 50 lux if you think it's necessary, but you can see what happened in this painting. The red in the bottom that was covered, it disappears. So we have to be very careful about the paints that are more fugitive, like Crimson Lake or Violet. If the paints are particularly dark and not easy to see, then you can increase the lighting. To compensate, turn the light off completely when there are no visitors. Now, regarding furniture on exhibition, regular maintenance is the only way to avoid dust deposition and pollutants. We have to be careful with pests, insects, rodents, and fungi, as I talked before. Always inspect new acquisitions and any pieces suspected of being infected. The new acquisition should go into quarantine before going to the exhibition. You should implement integrated pest control management in order to detect and deal with the pests. and eliminate food source and correct conditions conducive to the development of pests, such as garbage, dirt, and high relative humidity. Remember that fungi growth occurs when the relative humidity is above 65%. Sometimes a piece of furniture is using with objects inside, and if the wood is not emitting pollutants such as acetic acid or formic acid, it's okay. And now we are going to talk about costumes on exhibition. We have to have again very careful about the light, the relative humidity, the physical forces, the molds and the insects. Well, we can find 5 different ways to minimize the effect of light, to reduce the light to 60 lux when textiles are on display, use a timer or a motion detector to control the lights, turn off the lights whenever there are no visitors, ensure that UV radiation is less than 75 microwatts per lumen, and limit the display of textile that can fade to 6 months in 5 years. Regarding physical forces, you should have appropriate molds for your antique costumes, like this is the case, or to hang heavier textiles in shoe Velcro along the upper, like in here you can see this huge, this has never staple or nail a textile, so this is with Velcro. Molds, or as I said, more than 65% of relative humidity and high temperature and stagnant air promote mold growth. We have to be careful with that with textiles. It is important to examine and clean all the items. And if you can detect an infestation, you should isolate that case and remove it from the exhibition. This is a particular case of moths or beetles that cause irreparable damage, as you can see in the picture. And we know that if the textiles are dirty, they are more attractive to insects than the clean ones. So infested textiles must be isolated immediately. And again, we are back to my colleague with photographic materials.
I promise I will finish in 5 minutes.
Consegues?
I can. I will manage. So, concerning photography, I'll be very, very quick. What is really, really important is to make sure that you have the relative humidity and the light very well controlled. And it's really important to decide if the photographic material is available or not, is well or not to be exhibited. So if you think it's not in good condition to be exhibited, don't exhibit it, okay? It's really crucial to decide if it's in a good condition to be exhibited. So if you decide it's in a good condition, or if you think you cannot decide by yourself and you call a conservator that says it's good for exhibition, Be aware of the light. It's really important to keep the light at a minimum level. And another important data is that photographies or photographic material should have a limit of 12 weeks per year to be exhibited. Okay, so if you have light sources, please be careful, and also about the relative humidity again and temperature. We are always mentioning it. How to protect. So if you have photographies or photographic material, it should be framed to have a first level of protection. Is another very important thing is to keep the frames on areas with temperature and relative humidity controls. We keep talking about this. If possible, add a second level of protection. Okay. As we see here, it has a frame and then it has a glass protecting it. The cases should be should not be airtight, so it should allow some ventilation again to prevent dust from accumulating. Okay, all construction materials in the room must be non-reactive. So all the paintings, the fabrics, the finishes should be made with materials that do not react with your photographic material. So concerning paper, it ages and deteriorates, so we should be careful when we have them on exhibition. Oh, sorry for the title. Something happened here with my titles. So if you have an idea that this kind of material can be at risk of vandalism and dissociation from the others, be careful, pay attention to this, okay? Small pieces are the more difficult ones because they can be easily stolen. Special books and maps should be exhibited inside display cases, as we see here on the picture, and because they prevent the public from touching it, and this is very important. And also, as Filomena explained, this can be a way to create a specific and special environment for this type of materials if they need a special and closed environment. Again, light is a very big enemy, so reduce the light exposure. Concerning glass and ceramics, we don't have the same problem with light, but we have a problem with relative humidity and pollutants. So the shelves should be ideally made out of glass. And if not possible, they should be made with materials that do not release volatile organic compounds. The temperature and relative humidity should be monitored. And as I said, the light is not a problem for glass and ceramics, but it can be a problem if they were restored previously. If you have adhesives, they can be a problem. And as we see here, we have glass shelves and it's closed. So if you have a very big object that needs to be exhibited without a protective case, without a protective lid, create a barrier to prevent people from touching it. This is very important, okay? So what about metals? We have also the need to have cabinets with conservation quality materials, meaning that they won't release anything harmful for our material. And they should, these cabinets are very important because they protect from touching, from dust to enter, but they should have air circulating in it, okay? Again, if possible, the shelves should be made with glass because glass does not unleash any volatile organic compounds, so it's safe to metals. What needs to be monitored? Again, it's humidity, temperature, and pollutants. The environment should be stable. The light is not a problem for metallic material unless it has previous restorations. Stone, usually, again, we think about big objects. If you have small objects and you can create a cabinet with air circulation that prevents people from touching, it's the ideal. If not, we have to inevitably exhibit them without a protective lid. So again, create a barrier to avoid people to touch it. I think this is it, or we are almost finishing. So as we see here, this is a very interesting example because we have a big stone, but you can see here it has a protective lid because it's a very, very important stone. So it was created a protective lid in this situation. Thank you. We finished. I think